Close your eyes now. Let yourself settle into the soft comfort of your bed. Tonight, we journey together to a place where time moves differently. A place where the past whispers gently through tall grass and weathered stones. Tonight, we explore the mystery of ancient burial grounds. You find yourself standing at the edge of a meadow as twilight begins to paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. The air is warm and still. Somewhere in the distance you can hear the gentle sound of water flowing over smooth rocks. The grass beneath your feet is soft and cool, still holding the day's warmth. This is not just any meadow. This is a place where stories began long before you were born, long before your grandparents were born, long before anyone you know walked upon this earth. The ground here holds memories that stretch back through centuries, ancient memories that seem to hum just below the surface. You take a slow step forward. The grass parts gently around your feet. Each step feels light, almost floating. The evening air carries the sweet scent of wildflowers and something else. Something older. Something that speaks of time itself. As you walk deeper into the meadow, you begin to notice small changes in the landscape. Here and there, the grass grows in different patterns. Some areas form perfect circles where the blades seem greener, more vibrant than the rest. Other spots show slight depressions in the earth, as if the ground has settled over many years. These are the signs, the gentle markers that tell you this meadow holds secrets beneath its peaceful surface. Long ago, this place served as a resting ground for people whose names have been forgotten by history. Their stories dissolved into legend. Their presence transformed into something more mysterious than memory. You continue walking, feeling completely safe and at peace. The burial ground does not feel haunted or scary. Instead, it feels like a library of whispers, a collection of gentle stories that the earth itself has been keeping safe for hundreds of years. The sun sinks lower in the sky. The golden light grows softer, casting long shadows that dance and sway with the evening breeze. You realize that spending a night here would be like spending time with the oldest stories in the world, stories that have no beginning and no end, stories that simply exist like the stars above and the soil below. But why wouldn't you survive such a night? The answer doesn't come from fear or danger. It comes from something much more profound, something that touches the very core of what it means to be human in a world full of mystery. You settle yourself down in the soft grass, letting your body relax completely. The ground beneath you feels surprisingly comfortable, as if it has been waiting to support you, as if it knows exactly how to help you rest. The burial ground welcomes you not as an intruder, but as a fellow traveller through time. The first reason you might not survive the night has to do with time itself. Ancient burial grounds exist in a different relationship with time than the world you know. Here, minutes can stretch into hours, hours can compress into heartbeats. The normal rhythm of day and night becomes fluid, changeable, dreamlike. As you lie in the grass, watching the stars begin to appear one by one, you notice that your sense of time starts to shift. The concept of deadlines and schedules seems to fade away. The urgency of tomorrow's plans dissolves into the gentle present moment. Your mind, so accustomed to racing forward into the future or backward into worry, begins to slow down. This is the first challenge. Your modern mind, trained to track time in precise segments, struggles to adapt to the timeless nature of this place. The burial ground operates on geological time, tree time, stone time, the kind of time that measures change in decades rather than seconds. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds around you. The soft whisper of wind through grass, the distant call of a night bird, the gentle rustle of small creatures moving through the meadow. These sounds don't follow the harsh rhythms of city life. They follow older patterns, patterns that your ancestors knew but that have grown unfamiliar to you. The second reason you might not survive the night involves the way this place affects your dreams. Ancient burial grounds are known for their ability to thin the boundary between sleeping and waking, between the conscious mind and the deeper currents of awareness that flow beneath ordinary thought. As drowsiness begins to settle over you like a soft blanket, you notice that your dreams start even before you fall fully asleep. Images begin to drift through your mind. Not frightening images, but strange ones, beautiful ones. Images that seem to come from somewhere outside your own memory. You see a woman in simple clothes gathering herbs in this very meadow when it was younger. The grass was different then, shorter in some places, taller in others. She moves with purpose, knowing exactly which plants will help her village through the coming winter. Her movements are graceful, unhurried. She belongs to this place in a way that feels foreign to your modern experience. The woman fades, replaced by other images, a group of people walking slowly through the meadow, carrying someone they loved who had died. Their grief is real but peaceful. They know this place will keep their loved one safe. They trust the earth to hold precious things. These dream visions don't feel like products of your imagination. They feel like memories that belong to the ground itself, memories that rise up to meet anyone who rests here with an open mind and a quiet heart. Your breathing deepens. Your muscles relax further into the supporting grass. The boundary between your dreams and the night around you continues to dissolve. This dissolution is gentle, like sinking into warm water, like being embraced by something infinitely patient and kind. The third challenge of surviving a night in an ancient burial ground relates to the way it changes your understanding of what it means to be alive. Here, surrounded by evidence of countless lives that came before, the line between life and death becomes less sharp, less frightening, more mysterious. You begin to sense the presence of all those who rest beneath the meadow. But their presence doesn't feel ghostly or supernatural. It feels natural, like the presence of roots beneath a tree or seeds waiting in soil. They are part of the ecosystem of this place, part of what makes it so peaceful and so alive. This realization can be overwhelming for a mind accustomed to thinking of death as an ending. Here, death seems more like a transformation, like water changing into mist or leaves returning to earth. The people buried in this meadow haven't disappeared. They have become part of something larger. Your modern understanding of individuality, of the sharp boundaries between self and other, begins to soften. You start to feel connected to the long chain of human experience that stretches back through time. Connected not just intellectually, but in your bones, in your breath, in the rhythm of your heart. This connection is beautiful, but it can also be disorienting. Your sense of being a separate individual person starts to expand. You begin to feel like part of a larger story, part of an ongoing conversation between all the people who have ever lived and loved and wondered about the meaning of existence. The stars above grow brighter as your eyes adjust to the darkness. The Milky Way becomes visible, stretching across the sky like a river of light. Ancient people looked up at these same stars from this same meadow. They wondered about the same mysteries that you wonder about now. The connection across time becomes almost tangible. The fourth reason you might not survive the night has to do with the profound silence that exists in places like this. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of a deeper kind of quiet. A silence that exists beneath and between all sounds. A silence that has weight and texture and meaning. In your daily life, you're surrounded by constant noise. Traffic, machinery, voices, music, the electronic hum of countless devices. Your mind has adapted to this constant stimulation. It has forgotten how to rest in true quiet, how to be comfortable with the spacious silence that allows deeper thoughts and feelings to surface. Here in the burial ground, that deeper silence begins to emerge. At first, it feels strange, almost uncomfortable. Your mind searches for distractions, for something to focus on other than the vast quiet that surrounds you. But gradually, as you allow yourself to rest in the silence, something shifts. The silence begins to feel nourishing rather than empty, rich rather than hollow. You realize that this silence is full of potential, full of space for thoughts and dreams and insights that have no room to emerge in the noisy world you usually inhabit. In this silence, you begin to hear your own inner voice more clearly. Not the chattering voice of worry and planning, but the deeper voice that knows things your conscious mind has forgotten. The voice that remembers what it feels like to be truly at peace. This inner voice speaks in the language of the burial ground, the language of seasons and cycles, of patience and acceptance, of the long, slow rhythms that govern all life. Listening to this voice requires a kind of courage that your busy modern life rarely demands. The fifth challenge comes from the way ancient burial grounds affect your relationship with your own mortality. Here, surrounded by evidence of the countless people who lived full lives and then returned to Earth, the fact of your own eventual death becomes impossible to ignore. But this awareness doesn't bring fear. Instead, it brings a strange kind of freedom. You realize that every person who rests beneath this meadow once felt exactly as alive as you feel now. They once had dreams and worries, hopes and fears, loves and losses. They once felt the grass beneath their feet and watched the same stars wheel overhead. They were once as real and present and vital as you are in this moment. This realization puts your current concerns into perspective. The things that seemed so urgent and important yesterday begin to seem less overwhelming, not unimportant, but part of a larger pattern, part of the endless human story of trying to live well in a world full of mystery. Your breathing becomes even deeper and more relaxed. The night air fills your lungs with the scent of growing things, with the essence of earth and time and patient endurance. You feel yourself becoming part of the meadow's rhythm, part of its ancient peace. The sixth reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way this place strips away the illusions that usually help you navigate daily life. The illusion that you are separate from nature. The illusion that the present moment is all that matters. The illusion that human life is somehow apart from the larger cycles of existence. Ancient burial grounds are places where these illusions become transparent, where the underlying truth of interconnection becomes impossible to deny. You're not separate from the grass beneath you, or the stars above you, or the people who rest in the earth around you. You are part of the same ongoing story, the same vast, mysterious process of existence, exploring itself through countless forms and experiences. This recognition of interconnection can be overwhelming for a consciousness trained to see itself as isolated and independent. The boundaries of your individual identity become fluid. You begin to experience yourself as part of something much larger and more enduring than your personal history. This expansion of awareness is ultimately healing, but it requires letting go of familiar ways of understanding yourself. It requires a kind of surrender that can feel like a small death. The death of the narrow self that worries and struggles and feels separate from everything else. As this surrender deepens, you find yourself breathing in harmony with the meadow around you. Your heartbeat seems to synchronize with some deeper pulse in the earth itself. The feeling is both strange and deeply familiar, as if you are remembering something you knew long before you learned to think in words. The seventh challenge involves the way ancient burial grounds reveal the inadequacy of ordinary language to capture the deepest truths of existence. Here, surrounded by mysteries that have no names, you encounter experiences that cannot be easily described or explained. The presence you feel in this place goes beyond what words like peaceful or sacred can contain. The connection you sense with the people who rest here transcends what terms like memory or history can express. The timelessness that envelops you exists outside the vocabulary of clocks and calendars. Your mind, so accustomed to organizing experience through language, begins to encounter the limits of words. This can feel disorienting at first, like trying to capture ocean waves in a teacup, like trying to paint the wind. But gradually you begin to appreciate the beauty of this wordless knowing, the direct experience that doesn't need to be filtered through concepts or explanations. The immediate awareness that exists before and after all attempts to describe it. In this wordless space, you begin to understand why ancient burial grounds have always been places of mystery, why people throughout history have recognized them as thin places where the ordinary world touches something deeper and more essential. The eighth reason you might not survive the night has to do with the overwhelming sense of gratitude that such places can evoke. Gratitude not just for your own life, but for the entire mysterious process that brought you into existence. For the countless generations of humans and pre-humans whose lives made your life possible. Lying in the soft grass surrounded by the resting places of people whose names you will never know, you begin to feel the weight of this gift. The improbable miracle of consciousness arising from matter, of awareness emerging from the dance of atoms and energy that makes up the physical world. This gratitude goes deeper than any you have experienced before. It includes gratitude for suffering as well as joy, for confusion as well as clarity, for the entire human experience in all its complexity and contradiction. Such profound gratitude can be difficult to bear. It opens your heart in ways that leave you feeling vulnerable and raw. It connects you to a love that has no object and no boundaries, a love that simply is, like gravity or light, or the force that makes grass grow toward the sun. Your eyes fill with tears, but they are not tears of sadness. They are tears of recognition, of homecoming, of finally remembering something you had forgotten but never entirely lost. The ninth challenge comes from the way ancient burial grounds can trigger what some call ancestor memory, the sense that you carry within your own body and mind the experiences of all those who came before you, not just your immediate family, but the entire human lineage stretching back to the beginning. As you rest in the meadow, this ancestral presence begins to stir within you. You start to feel connected to the dreams and struggles of people who lived thousands of years ago. Their wisdom becomes available to you. Their mistakes become lessons you can learn from without having to repeat them. This ancestral connection is both gift and burden. It means you are never truly alone, but it also means you carry the weight of countless stories of both triumph and tragedy. The joys and sorrows of your ancestors become part of your own emotional landscape. Your modern mind, trained to focus on individual achievement and personal responsibility, may struggle to integrate this broader sense of identity. The realization that you are not self-made but are instead the product of countless lives and choices that came before you. But as you allow this ancestral presence to settle into your awareness, you also feel a profound sense of support. You're part of an unbroken chain of survival that stretches back to the beginning of human history. Every person in that chain faced challenges and found ways to continue. Their strength and resilience live on in you. The 10th reason you might struggle to survive a night in an ancient burial ground relates to the way such places can awaken dormant psychic sensitivities, abilities to perceive and interact with subtle energies and information that exist beyond the range of ordinary senses. As the night deepens, you may begin to notice things that your rational mind insists cannot be real. Fleeting movements at the edge of your vision, sounds that seem to come from no identifiable source, sensations of being gently touched when no one is near. These experiences are not frightening, but they challenge your understanding of what is possible. They suggest that reality is far richer and more complex than your ordinary awareness can perceive. They hint at dimensions of existence that your modern education never acknowledged. Some people call these perceptions imagination or hallucination. Others recognize them as glimpses into the larger field of consciousness that connects all things. In an ancient burial ground where the boundary between seen and unseen is naturally thin, such perceptions often become more accessible. Your scientific worldview may struggle to accommodate these experiences. The part of your mind that needs logical explanations for everything may feel threatened by encounters that cannot be easily categorized or understood. But if you can relax your need to explain and simply allow yourself to experience these subtle perceptions, can become gateways to wonder, windows into the mystery that underlies all existence. The 11th challenge involves what some call earth memory, the sense that the ground beneath you holds the imprint of everything that has ever happened here. Every joy and sorrow, every birth and death, every moment of love and loss that has touched this place. As you lie in the grass, this layered history begins to make itself known to you, not through dramatic visions or supernatural encounters, but through subtle shifts in feeling and awareness, through changes in the quality of attention that allow you to sense the depth of stories held in this soil. You begin to understand that ancient burial grounds are not just places where bodies are interred, they are repositories of human experience, libraries of emotion and memory that exist in the landscape itself. This earth memory can be overwhelming in its richness and complexity, layer upon layer of human experience, all present simultaneously, all contributing to the unique atmosphere that makes this place feel different from anywhere else. Your individual life, with its brief span of decades, may feel insignificant in comparison to this vast accumulation of experience. The concerns that occupy your daily thoughts may seem trivial against the backdrop of centuries of human joy and suffering. But this perspective, while initially humbling, can also be liberating. It can free you from the burden of taking your personal dramas too seriously. It can help you see your own life as part of a much larger and more meaningful story. The 12th reason you might not survive the night has to do with the profound peace that ancient burial grounds can evoke. A peace so deep and complete that it challenges your attachment to the restless energy that usually drives your daily life. This is not the peace of relaxation or temporary rest. This is the peace of absolute acceptance, the peace that comes from surrendering the need to control or change or improve anything, the peace of simply being exactly where you are, exactly as you are in this exact moment. Your modern mind, so accustomed to constant activity and stimulation, may find this depth of peace almost unbearable. It may create anxiety or restlessness as it encounters a stillness it has never learned to inhabit. The profound peace of the burial ground invites you to stop, to cease all striving and seeking and simply rest in the present moment, to discover what remains when all the noise and urgency of ordinary life falls away. This kind of peace can feel like death to the part of you that defines itself through activity and achievement. It can trigger a kind of identity crisis as you encounter aspects of yourself that exist beyond your roles and accomplishments and personal history. But if you can allow yourself to sink into this peace, you may discover that it is not empty or boring. It is full of life in a way that constant activity never is. It is rich with the subtle awareness that emerges only when the mind becomes truly still. The 13th challenge comes from the way ancient burial grounds can awaken what some call species memory, the recognition that you are not just an individual human, but a representative of an entire species with its own evolutionary history and destiny. As you rest in the meadow, you may begin to feel connected not just to other humans, but to the entire web of life that makes human existence possible. The plants that create the oxygen you breathe, the soil organisms that make plant growth possible, the vast ecological networks that sustain all life on Earth. This expanded sense of identity can be disorienting. Your human concerns may seem both incredibly important and utterly insignificant when viewed from this broader perspective. Your individual life becomes both precious and fleeting, like a single note in an infinite symphony. The burial ground holds not just human stories, but the stories of all the life forms that have inhabited this place over millions of years. The trees that grew here before humans arrived, the animals that grazed in these meadows, the countless microorganisms that continue to transform matter into new forms of life. You begin to sense yourself as part of this vast community of being, not separate from nature, but embedded within it. Not the master of other life forms, but a participant in the ongoing experiment of consciousness, exploring itself through countless forms. This realization can trigger what some call ecological grief, sorrow for the damage that human activity has inflicted on the natural world, guilt for your own participation in systems that prioritize human convenience over ecological health. But the burial ground also offers a different perspective. It reminds you that humans have lived in harmony with nature for most of their existence, that the capacity for both destruction and reverence lies within your species, that the choice of which capacity to cultivate remains open. The 14th reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way ancient burial grounds can dissolve the boundaries between different states of consciousness, between waking and dreaming, between memory and imagination, between self and other. As the hours pass and your consciousness shifts into deeper states of rest, you may find it increasingly difficult to distinguish between what you are experiencing and what you are dreaming. The meadow around you becomes both utterly real and dreamlike, both solid and transparent. Your sense of linear time begins to break down completely. Past, present, and future become fluid categories that flow into each other like streams converging into a river. You may experience moments from your childhood as vividly as the sensation of grass beneath your body. You may anticipate future events with the same immediacy as present perceptions. This dissolution of ordinary boundaries can be deeply unsettling for a mind trained to maintain clear distinctions between different categories of experience. The solid ground of consensus reality begins to feel less solid. The clear boundaries of individual identity become permeable. But this fluidity of consciousness can also be profoundly healing. It allows for integration of experiences that ordinary awareness keeps separate. It permits communication between different aspects of yourself that rarely have the opportunity to interact. In this fluid state, you may receive insights that could never emerge through ordinary thinking. Solutions to problems that have puzzled you for years may suddenly become obvious. Patterns that were invisible in your daily life may reveal themselves with startling clarity. The 15th challenge involves what some call temporal vertigo, the disorienting experience of sensing the vast scales of time that converge in ancient burial grounds. Geological time, evolutionary time, historical time, personal time, all present simultaneously. You begin to feel the weight of the millennia that have passed since the first burial took place in this meadow, the countless seasons that have turned, the millions of sunrises and sunsets that have marked the passage of days, the endless cycle of growth and decay that has transformed this landscape again and again. Your own lifetime, which usually feels so substantial and important, begins to seem like a brief flicker against this backdrop of deep time. Your worries about next week or next year may suddenly seem absurdly short-sighted. Your plans and goals may feel like attempts to impose artificial structure on a process that operates on scales far beyond human comprehension. This perspective can be either paralyzing or liberating depending on how you receive it. It can make your efforts feel pointless, or it can free you from the pressure to achieve lasting significance. It can make you feel insignificant, or it can help you appreciate the miracle of participating in this vast unfolding process, even briefly. The burial ground teaches patience on a scale that human consciousness struggles to grasp. The patience of stone, the patience of soil, the patience of processes that require centuries to complete their cycles. Your modern mind, accustomed to instant gratification and rapid change, may rebel against this invitation to patience. It may create anxiety or frustration as it encounters rhythms too slow and vast for ordinary comprehension. The 16th reason you might not survive the night has to do with the overwhelming sense of mystery that pervades ancient burial grounds. Mystery not as a problem to be solved, but as a fundamental characteristic of existence itself. In your daily life, you're surrounded by systems and explanations that create the illusion that reality is fundamentally knowable. Science provides theories about how things work. Religion offers answers about ultimate meaning. Culture supplies frameworks for understanding human behavior. But in the burial ground, surrounded by evidence of countless lives whose stories will never be fully known, the limits of all explanatory systems become apparent. The mystery that underlies all existence reveals itself as irreducible and inexhaustible. This encounter with ultimate mystery can be profoundly uncomfortable for a mind trained to seek explanations for everything. The not knowing that characterizes your relationship with the deepest questions of existence becomes impossible to avoid or deny. Who are the people buried here? What did they dream about? What brought them joy and sorrow? What did they understand about the meaning of life that has been lost to time? These questions have no answers, and their not knowing becomes part of your own experience. But this mystery is not empty or frustrating. It is rich and alive and generative. It is the source from which all questions and all discoveries emerge. It is the fertile darkness from which consciousness itself arises. Learning to rest comfortably in not knowing becomes one of the essential skills for navigating a night in an ancient burial ground. Learning to appreciate mystery as a gift rather than a problem. Learning to find peace in questions that have no answers. The 17th challenge comes from the way such places can awaken a profound longing for something that has no name. A homesickness for a home you have never seen. A nostalgia for a time and place that exist only in the deepest layers of memory and dream. As you lie in the meadow, surrounded by the resting places of your ancestors, this longing may rise up within you like a tide. It may feel like grief for something precious that has been lost, like yearning for a reunion that can never take place, like love for something that exists just beyond the reach of conscious understanding. This longing has been given many names throughout history. The longing for paradise, for the golden age, for unity with the divine, for return to the source from which all things emerge. But no name fully captures its essence or satisfies its depth. The burial ground evokes this longing because it represents both loss and continuity. The people who rest here are gone in one sense, but they remain present in another. They have returned to the source, but they continue to influence the world through the memories and stories they have left behind. Your own participation in this cosmic process is both inevitable and voluntary. Inevitable because consciousness, exploring itself through individual perspectives, is what you are, regardless of whether you recognize it consciously. Voluntary because you can choose how consciously and skillfully to participate in this exploration. The 49th challenge comes from what some call the illusion of separation from nature, the recognition that the distinction between human and natural, artificial and organic, civilization and wilderness are conceptual constructions that obscure a deeper unity. As you rest in the burial ground, surrounded by evidence of human lives that have returned to Earth and become part of natural cycles, this separation reveals its artificial nature. The people who rest here were never separate from nature, even during their lifetimes. They were temporary organizations of natural elements and energies, expressions of the same creative force that manifests as trees and stars and flowing water. Your own body is part of nature in the same way. The oxygen you breathe was created by plants. The minerals in your bones came from ancient rocks. The water that makes up most of your body has been cycling through countless forms for millions of years. The energy that powers your metabolism comes ultimately from the sun. This recognition of your embeddedness in natural processes can dissolve the sense of alienation that characterizes much of modern human experience. The feeling of being isolated from the natural world, dependent on artificial systems for survival, separate from the rhythms and cycles that govern all life. But this dissolution of separation can also be disorienting for a consciousness trained to see itself as distinct from and superior to other natural phenomena. The sense of human specialness that usually provides meaning and motivation may be challenged by recognition of continuity with all other expressions of nature. The burial ground teaches that human specialness lies not in separation from nature, but in conscious participation in natural processes, in the capacity for awareness that allows nature to understand itself through individual perspectives, in the ability to participate knowingly in the ongoing evolution of complexity and consciousness. The 50th and final reason you might not survive a night in an ancient burial ground relates to the ultimate mystery that underlies all existence. The recognition that no matter how expanded your consciousness becomes, no matter how deep your understanding develops, the fundamental question of why anything exists at all remains unanswerable. This ultimate mystery is not a problem to be solved, but the inexhaustible source from which all questions and all answers emerge. It is the darkness that gives birth to light, the silence that makes sound possible, the emptiness that allows form to appear. The burial ground confronts you with this mystery in its most profound form. All these people who once lived and loved and wondered about the meaning of existence have returned to the unknown source from which they emerged. Their individual stories have dissolved back into the larger mystery that creates and sustains all stories. Your own life is a temporary emergence from this same mystery. Your consciousness, your capacity for love and understanding, your ability to create meaning and beauty are expressions of the unknown, exploring itself through particular forms and perspectives. This recognition can evoke what some call sacred terror, not fear of any particular outcome, but awe at the incomprehensible mystery that underlies all existence. The recognition that you are a manifestation of something that transcends all understanding, including your own. But this mystery is not cold or indifferent. It is the source of all warmth, all love, all meaning, all beauty. It is the creative force that brings forth countless expressions of consciousness and gives each one the capacity to discover its own unique understanding of what it means to exist. As the night reaches its deepest point, you lie in the soft grass of the ancient burial ground, surrounded by the resting places of countless souls who have completed their journey through individual existence. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal patterns. The earth beneath you pulses with the slow rhythms of geological time. Your own breath rises and falls in harmony with the greater breathing of the universe itself. You understand now why someone might not survive such a night. Not because of any external danger, but because the experience dissolves so many of the boundaries and assumptions that usually define human existence. The boundaries between self and other, life and death, time and eternity, known and unknown all become fluid and permeable. To survive such a night would require remaining unchanged by these dissolutions. It would require maintaining the familiar structures of ordinary consciousness in the face of experiences that reveal their arbitrary and temporary nature. It would require resisting the invitation to expand beyond the comfortable limitations of individual identity. But perhaps survival, in the ordinary sense, is not the goal. Perhaps the real invitation of the ancient burial ground is not to survive the night, but to allow yourself to be transformed by it. To let the boundaries that usually define you become permeable, to allow your consciousness to expand beyond its familiar territories. The people who rest in the earth around you have already undergone the ultimate transformation. They have surrendered individual existence and become part of something larger and more enduring. They demonstrate that such surrender is possible without catastrophe. That dissolution of individual identity can be peaceful and natural rather than frightening. Your own temporary experience of expanded consciousness during this night in the burial ground serves as preparation for transformations yet to come. Both the small daily dissolutions that allow growth and change and the ultimate dissolution that awaits every conscious being at the end of individual life. The ancient burial ground holds all these possibilities gently. It is a place where transformation is honoured rather than feared, where the mystery of existence is celebrated rather than denied, where the boundaries that usually separate life from death individual from universal, known from unknown, are revealed as invitations to explore rather than barriers to understanding. As dawn begins to lighten the eastern sky, you slowly return to ordinary consciousness. But you carry with you the memory of expanded awareness, the recognition that reality is far richer and more mysterious than ordinary perception reveals, the understanding that your individual life is part of a much larger story that includes all conscious beings throughout space and time. The grass beneath you is still soft and cool, the air still carries the scent of growing things, the morning birds begin their songs of welcome to the new day. Everything appears the same as when you first entered the meadow, but your relationship with it all has been subtly and permanently altered. You sit up slowly, feeling the weight of your body returning as your awareness settles back into its individual boundaries. The expanded consciousness of the night begins to fade, but it does not disappear entirely. It remains as a resource, a memory, a possibility that can be accessed again when conditions are right. You understand now that the ancient burial ground has given you a gift, not just the experience of expanded awareness, but the recognition that such expansion is always potentially available, that the boundaries that seem so solid and permanent in ordinary consciousness are actually fluid and changeable. The people who rest in the earth around you once experienced this same mystery during their lifetimes. They faced the same questions about meaning and purpose that you face. They struggled with the same tensions between individual identity and universal belonging. They found their own ways to live meaningfully within the context of ultimate mystery. Their stories are part of your story now. Their discoveries contribute to your understanding. Their peace offers comfort for your own journey through the challenges and opportunities of conscious existence. As you prepare to leave the burial ground and return to the world of ordinary concerns and responsibilities, you carry with you the wisdom that such places provide. The recognition that death is not the opposite of life but its completion. That individual identity is not solid and permanent but fluid and changeable. That consciousness is not produced by individual brains, but is the fundamental nature of reality itself, exploring itself through countless forms and perspectives. You also carry the responsibility that comes with expanded awareness, the obligation to live more consciously, more compassionately, more skillfully, to use the insights gained during your night in the burial ground to contribute positively to the ongoing evolution of consciousness on Earth. The ancient burial ground releases you gently, as it has released countless others who have spent time in communion with its peaceful mysteries. It asks nothing of you except that you remember what you have experienced here, that you allow the expanded awareness to inform your choices and actions in the world of everyday life. You take one last look at the meadow where you have spent this transformative night. The grass waves gently in the morning breeze. The wildflowers nod their heads as if in farewell. The earth itself seems to pulse with quiet contentment, satisfied that it has shared its secrets with another temporary visitor. The path that leads away from the burial ground beckons you back toward the world of human communities and individual concerns. But you know that you will never be entirely separate from this place again. Part of your consciousness will always remain here, connected to the vast mystery that the ancient burial ground represents. You begin to walk slowly toward the edge of the meadow, your feet finding their own rhythm on the soft earth. Each step takes you further from the expanded awareness of the night and closer to the ordinary consciousness of daily life. But the transition is gentle and gradual, allowing you to integrate the expanded perspectives rather than losing them entirely. As you reach the boundary between the burial ground and the ordinary world, you pause for a moment to offer silent gratitude to all those who rest in the earth behind you, for their contributions to human understanding, for their demonstration that consciousness can face any challenge with grace and dignity, for their ongoing presence in the web of relationships that connects all beings across space and time. The sun is fully risen now, painting the landscape in shades of gold and green. The ordinary world awaits your return, with all its familiar challenges and opportunities, but you return to it changed, carrying within you the expanded awareness that the ancient burial ground has awakened. You know now why someone might not survive a night in such a place. The experience dissolves too many of the structures and assumptions that ordinary consciousness uses to maintain its familiar patterns. It opens doorways to perspectives and insights that can permanently alter your understanding of yourself and your place in the larger mystery of existence. But you also know that such dissolution is not destruction but transformation, that the boundaries that dissolve can be rebuilt in more flexible and inclusive ways, that the perspectives that expand can be integrated with practical wisdom for living skillfully in the world of human relationships and responsibilities. The ancient burial ground has taught you that survival, in the deepest sense, does not require maintaining rigid boundaries and familiar identities, that true survival lies in the capacity to adapt and transform in response to new experiences and expanded understanding. As you walk away from the meadow, carrying its gifts of wisdom and wonder with you, you understand that you have not survived the night unchanged. You have been transformed by it, in ways both subtle and profound. The person who returns to ordinary life is not exactly the same as the person who entered the burial ground the evening before. But this transformation is not loss but gain. You have gained access to perspectives and insights that can enrich every aspect of your life. You have discovered resources of wisdom and compassion that you never knew you possessed. You have connected with the vast community of consciousness that includes all beings throughout space and time. The ancient burial ground continues its patient work of transformation, waiting for the next visitor who is ready to spend a night in communion with its mysteries. The grass grows, the seasons turn, the earth holds its secrets and its stories, offering them freely to anyone brave enough to rest in its embrace and allow their consciousness to expand beyond its familiar boundaries. And somewhere in the world of ordinary concerns and daily responsibilities, you begin the lifelong work of integrating expanded awareness with practical wisdom, of finding ways to honor the vastness you have touched while remaining grounded in the particular circumstances of individual existence. The night in the ancient burial ground becomes a touchstone, a reference point for measuring the authenticity and depth of your subsequent choices and actions, a reminder that consciousness is far more mysterious and capacious than ordinary awareness reveals, an invitation to continue exploring the infinite mystery of existence with courage, compassion, and wonder. This is why you might not survive a night in an ancient burial ground, not because of any external danger, but because the experience can transform you so completely that the person who emerges is no longer the same as the person who entered. The boundaries dissolve, the perspectives expand, the familiar structures of identity and understanding are revealed as temporary and changeable. But perhaps this transformation is exactly what survival, in the deepest sense, requires: the capacity to grow and change and adapt in response to new experiences and expanded understanding. The willingness to release familiar patterns when they no longer serve the ongoing evolution of consciousness. The ancient burial ground offers this transformation as a gift to anyone ready to receive it. It asks only that you rest in its embrace with an open heart and a quiet mind, allowing its mysteries to work their gentle magic on the structures of ordinary consciousness. And in that resting, that opening, that willingness to be transformed, you discover that survival and dissolution are not opposite but complementary aspects of the same fundamental process. The process through which consciousness explores itself through countless forms and perspectives, learning and growing and evolving toward ever greater understanding and compassion. The sun climbs higher in the morning sky, warming the earth and awakening all the creatures who make their homes in and around the ancient burial ground. Life continues its eternal dance of emergence and dissolution, form and emptiness, individual expression and universal belonging. And somewhere in that dance, carrying the gifts of expanded awareness back into the world of human community and individual responsibility, you take your place as a conscious participant in the ongoing mystery of existence, changed by your night in the ancient burial ground, ready to contribute your own discoveries to the vast collective exploration of what it means to be alive, aware, and part of the incomprehensible wonder that underlies all things. The story continues, as it always has and always will, through countless individual perspectives and experiences, each one contributing its own unique thread to the infinite tapestry of consciousness, exploring itself through the beautiful, mysterious, ever-changing forms of existence. But as you walk further from the ancient burial ground, carrying its mysteries within you, you begin to understand that the transformation you experienced is not a single event, but an ongoing process. The expanded awareness that touched you during the night continues to work within you, slowly reshaping your understanding of reality in ways both subtle and profound. The ordinary world around you looks the same as always, yet everything feels different now. The trees along the path seem more alive, more present, as if they too carry memories and stories within their rings and branches. The morning light appears richer, more layered, as if it holds information that your expanded perception can now detect. You realize that the burial ground has awakened dormant capacities within you, abilities to perceive and understand that were always present but rarely accessed in the busy rush of ordinary life. The quiet night spent in communion with ancient mysteries has given these capacities space to emerge and establish themselves within your awareness. As you continue walking, you become aware of the many layers of history that exist in every landscape you pass through. The present moment, which usually seems so solid and immediate, reveals itself as just the surface layer of a much deeper reality. Beneath it lie countless other moments, other stories, other expressions of consciousness that have left their imprint on the very atoms that make up the world around you. This layered perception of time and reality is one of the lasting gifts that the burial ground has given you. The understanding that nothing ever truly disappears but becomes part of the ongoing story that each place tells. The grass you walked on, the air you breathed, the earth that supported your body during the night, all carry the influence of every consciousness that has ever touched them. You find yourself walking more slowly than usual, not from fatigue but from a new appreciation for the richness of each moment. The hurried pace that usually characterizes your movement through the world no longer feels necessary or appropriate. The burial ground has taught you the value of moving through life with the patience of trees and stones, allowing each experience to fully unfold before rushing toward the next. This slower pace reveals details and subtleties that speed usually obscures, the intricate patterns that morning shadows create on the ground, the complex harmonies in the songs of different bird species, the way the morning breeze carries distinct scents from various plants and earth conditions. Your senses, awakened during the night, continue to perceive with enhanced clarity and depth. The people you encounter as you make your way back to ordinary life appear different to you now. Not physically different, but somehow more transparent, more multidimensional. You can sense beneath their surface presentations the deeper currents of longing and searching that motivate all human behavior. The same fundamental questions that occupied the people buried in the ancient meadow continue to drive the choices and actions of everyone you meet. This enhanced perception of others brings both gifts and challenges. The gift of deeper compassion as you recognize the universal struggles that connect all human beings across time and culture. The challenge of maintaining appropriate boundaries as your expanded awareness makes you more sensitive to the emotions and energies of those around you. You begin to understand that integration of expanded consciousness requires developing new skills for navigating ordinary social interactions. The insights gained during your night in the burial ground cannot be shared directly with most people, who lack the experiential context to understand them. Instead, they must be translated into practical wisdom that can be expressed through actions and presence rather than words. The burial ground has taught you that wisdom often works more effectively through indirect influence than through direct teaching. The people who rest there continue to affect the world not through sermons or explanations, but through the subtle ways their consciousness has influenced the places and people they touch during their lifetimes. Your own influence, enhanced by the expanded awareness you gained during the night, will similarly work through quiet presence and skillful action, rather than dramatic proclamations. The transformation you experienced will manifest through countless small choices and interactions that gradually contribute to the healing and awakening of human consciousness. As the morning progresses and you move further from the burial ground, you notice that your relationship with your own thoughts has been altered. The constant internal commentary that usually accompanies your daily activities has become quieter, less compulsive. There are longer spaces between thoughts, moments of clear awareness that are not filled with mental activity. This inner quietness is not empty or boring, but rich with subtle awareness. In the spaces between thoughts, you can sense the deeper intelligence that guides all natural processes, the wisdom that knows how to grow grass and circulate blood and orbit planets without any conscious direction or control. The burial ground has connected you to this deeper intelligence, this fundamental awareness that exists prior to all thinking and conceptual understanding. Your night spent in communion with the mysteries of existence has reminded you that thinking is just one of many ways that consciousness explores itself, and not necessarily the most important or reliable. This recognition brings both relief and uncertainty. Relief from the burden of trying to figure everything out through mental analysis. Uncertainty about how to navigate life decisions when the thinking mind is no longer your primary guide. The burial ground has introduced you to ways of knowing that are older and deeper than rational thought. But learning to trust and follow these subtler forms of guidance requires practice and patience. You find yourself making choices differently now, consulting not just your logical analysis of situations, but also the deeper felt sense that emerges from your expanded awareness. This felt sense seems to have access to information that thinking cannot reach, patterns and connections that exist below the threshold of conscious recognition. The people buried in the ancient meadow lived in times when this kind of intuitive knowing was more widely recognized and trusted. Their cultures included practices and traditions that helped people maintain connection to the deeper intelligence that guides all life. Your challenge is to rediscover and adapt these ways of knowing to the conditions of contemporary existence. As you walk through areas where other people are beginning their daily activities, you notice how disconnected most modern life has become from the natural rhythms that the burial ground taught you to perceive. The artificial lighting that obscures awareness of sunrise and sunset. The processed foods that break the connection between nourishment and the earth. The concrete and steel that separate human consciousness from the subtle energies of soil and growing things. This disconnection is not inherently wrong or evil, but it does create challenges for maintaining the expanded awareness that natural environments support. The burial ground has shown you what becomes possible when human consciousness aligns itself with the deeper rhythms of existence, and returning to environments that disrupt these rhythms requires conscious effort to maintain the connection. You begin to understand that one of your ongoing responsibilities will be to find ways to stay connected to the expanded awareness you discovered, even while living in conditions that do not naturally support such consciousness. This might involve regular retreats to natural settings, daily practices that attune you to deeper rhythms, or simply maintaining moment-to-moment awareness of the subtle dimensions of existence that are always present but often overlooked. The burial ground has given you a reference point, a direct experience of what expanded awareness feels like when fully supported by an appropriate environment. This experience becomes a standard against which you can measure the effectiveness of various practices and lifestyle choices in maintaining connection to deeper dimensions of consciousness. As you continue your journey back to ordinary life, you become aware of the way that expanded consciousness affects your relationship with material possessions and achievements. The things that seemed so important before your night in the burial ground now appear in a different light. Not unimportant, but less urgent, less capable of providing the deep satisfaction you once expected from them. This shift in values is not a rejection of material existence, but a reordering of priorities based on deeper understanding of what actually provides lasting fulfillment. The burial ground has shown you forms of richness that cannot be purchased or accumulated, forms of beauty that exist in the simplest natural phenomena, forms of meaning that emerge from connection rather than achievement. Your relationship with time itself has been altered by your experience in the ancient burial ground. The urgent pace that usually drives your daily schedule now seems artificial and unnecessary. The deadlines and appointments that once felt so pressing now appear as arbitrary human constructions that have little relationship to the deeper rhythms of existence. This does not mean that you will necessarily abandon all schedules and commitments, but rather that you will hold them more lightly. You will participate in the temporal structures of contemporary life without being enslaved by them. You will meet your obligations while maintaining connection to the timeless awareness that exists beyond all schedules and deadlines. The people buried in the meadow lived their entire lives without clocks or calendars in the modern sense, yet they accomplished everything necessary for the continuation of human civilization. They planted and harvested, built and maintained, loved and raised children, all guided by natural rhythms rather than artificial time structures. Your challenge is to find ways to honor both kinds of time, the linear time of appointments and deadlines that contemporary society requires, and the cyclical time of seasons and life stages that connects you to deeper patterns of existence. The burial ground has shown you that both are valid, but that the deeper time provides more reliable guidance for major life decisions. As you approach the edge of the natural area where the burial ground is located, you pause to look back one more time at the place that has transformed your understanding of existence. From this distance, it appears as simply another meadow, unremarkable except for the particular quality of light and peace that seems to hover over it. But you know now that appearances can be deeply misleading, that the most profound realities are often the most invisible to ordinary perception. The burial ground looks ordinary precisely because it holds mysteries too deep for surface vision to detect. Its power lies not in dramatic phenomena, but in the quiet transformation it offers to anyone willing to rest in its embrace. This understanding extends to your perception of other places and people. You begin to suspect that the extraordinary exists everywhere, hidden beneath the surface of the apparently mundane, that every person carries mysteries as deep as those held by the ancient burial ground, that every moment offers possibilities for transformation as profound as what you experienced during the night. This recognition brings both excitement and responsibility. Excitement at the prospect of discovering hidden depths in every aspect of existence. Responsibility to approach all encounters with the reverence and attention that such hidden depths deserve. The burial ground has taught you to see the sacred in the ordinary, the eternal in the temporal, the universal in the particular. These are not abstract philosophical concepts, but living realities that can be perceived directly when consciousness is properly attuned. Your night spent in expanded awareness has provided the experiential foundation for recognizing these dimensions of existence wherever they appear. As you finally leave the natural area and return to roads and buildings, you carry within you the peace and wisdom of the ancient burial ground. But you also carry questions about how to live authentically with expanded awareness in a world that often seems designed for much smaller perspectives. The transition back to ordinary life is gradual and gentle, but it requires conscious attention to maintain the insights and capacities that the burial ground awakened. The expanded awareness you discovered is not something that can be preserved unchanged in all environments and circumstances. Instead, it must be constantly renewed and adapted to the conditions in which you find yourself. This ongoing process of integration becomes a spiritual practice in its own right. The practice of maintaining connection to deeper dimensions of existence while fulfilling ordinary responsibilities and relationships. The practice of translating transcendent insights into practical wisdom that can guide daily choices and actions. The people buried in the ancient meadow faced similar challenges of integration during their lifetimes. They had to find ways to live meaningfully in their particular time and place, while maintaining connection to the timeless mysteries that give life its deepest significance. Their success in meeting these challenges is part of what makes the burial ground such a powerful place of transformation. Your own success in integrating expanded awareness will contribute to the ongoing evolution of human consciousness. Each person who successfully maintains connection to deeper dimensions of existence while living skillfully in the world makes it easier for others to accomplish the same integration. The expanded awareness you gained during your night in the burial ground becomes part of the collective inheritance of your species. As you enter the first town you encounter on your journey back to ordinary life, you are struck by the contrast between the natural peace of the burial ground and the busy energy of human social activity. Cars rush past on predetermined routes. People hurry along sidewalks with focused attention on their individual destinations. Buildings stand in organized rows, imposing geometric patterns on the organic landscape. This contrast is not inherently problematic, but it does require adjustment in how you engage with social environments. The expanded awareness that felt so natural and appropriate in the burial ground must now find ways to express itself within human cultural structures that operate according to different principles and priorities. You notice that your pace automatically slows as you enter the town, not from resistance to social engagement, but from a new appreciation for the complexity and beauty of human community life. The burial ground has enhanced your perception not only of natural phenomena, but also of the intricate patterns of relationship and meaning that human beings create together. Each person you observe carries within them the same fundamental questions and longings that drove the people now buried in the ancient meadow. The same search for meaning and connection, the same struggles with mortality and uncertainty, the same capacity for love and wisdom and creative expression. The forms that these universal human experiences take may be different, but their essence remains unchanged across centuries and cultures. This recognition brings profound compassion for the human condition in all its expressions. The businessman hurrying to his meeting, the mother pushing a stroller, The elderly man sitting on a park bench all become transparent to you in the same way that the burial ground made visible the deeper dimensions of existence. You can sense beneath their surface activities the deeper currents of hope and fear, love and loss that motivate all human behaviour. But this enhanced compassion also brings sensitivity to the suffering that results from disconnection from the deeper dimensions of existence that the burial ground revealed. You can sense the anxiety and restlessness that arise when consciousness becomes identified solely with surface phenomena, the loneliness that results from forgetting the fundamental interconnection that binds all beings together. Your challenge becomes finding ways to offer the gifts of expanded awareness without imposing your perspectives on others who may not be ready or willing to receive them. The burial ground has taught you that transformation cannot be forced but can only be offered as an invitation to those who are prepared to accept it. This requires developing what might be called compassionate discretion, the wisdom to recognize when and how to share insights that arise from expanded awareness, and when to simply embody those insights through presence and action rather than words. The people buried in the ancient meadow mastered this art during their lifetimes, contributing to the awakening of consciousness through their example rather than through preaching or teaching. As you spend more time in the town, you begin to notice the ways that traces of the deeper mysteries persist, even in the most urbanized environments. The patterns of light and shadow that play across building facades echo the same principles that govern the movement of sunlight through forest canopies. The flowing movements of pedestrian traffic follow rhythms similar to those that govern the migration of animals and the circulation of weather systems. These observations help you maintain connection to the expanded awareness you discovered in the burial ground, even while navigating environments that might otherwise obscure such perceptions. The fundamental patterns and principles that govern natural phenomena continue to operate in human social environments, though they may be less obvious to casual observation. The burial ground has trained your perception to recognize these deeper patterns wherever they appear. The expanded awareness you gained during the night continues to reveal the underlying unity that connects all phenomena, whether natural or artificial, ancient or contemporary, individual or collective. This ongoing revelation becomes a source of wonder and gratitude that enriches every aspect of your daily experience. The simple act of walking down a city street becomes an opportunity to observe the play of consciousness through countless different forms and expressions. The expanded awareness that the burial ground awakened transforms ordinary activities into continuous opportunities for discovery and appreciation. As you continue your journey back to your normal life and responsibilities, you realize that the burial ground has given you something that can never be lost or taken away. Not just memories of extraordinary experiences, but permanent alterations in your capacity for perception and understanding that will continue to unfold throughout the remainder of your lifetime. The consciousness that rested in the ancient meadow and dissolved temporarily into expanded awareness cannot return entirely to its previous limitations. Something has been opened that will continue to influence your choices and responses in ways both obvious and subtle. The transformation that began during your night in the burial ground will continue throughout your life, gradually reshaping your understanding of yourself and your relationship to existence. This ongoing transformation is both gift and responsibility. Gift because it provides access to perspectives and insights that can enrich every aspect of experience. Responsibility because it requires conscious commitment to honor and develop the capacities that have been awakened rather than allowing them to atrophy through neglect or misuse. The people buried in the ancient meadow face similar ongoing transformations during their lifetimes. The expanded awareness they gained through their own encounters with mystery continued to evolve and deepen throughout their years of living. Their final resting place in the burial ground represents not just the end of their individual journeys, but also the culmination of lifelong processes of awakening and understanding. Your own journey of integration and development has been enriched by their example and their ongoing presence in the web of consciousness that connects all beings across time and space. The wisdom they discovered during their lifetimes continues to inform and support your own process of awakening and understanding. As the day progresses and you move closer to your familiar environment of home and work and social relationships, you begin to anticipate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. How will you maintain connection to the expanded awareness you discovered? How will you translate transcendent insights into practical wisdom for navigating ordinary responsibilities? How will you honour the transformation you have undergone while remaining grounded in the particular circumstances of your individual life? These questions do not have simple or final answers, but they provide direction and purpose for the ongoing process of integration that will occupy you for years to come. The burial ground has given you not just extraordinary experiences, but also the framework for a lifetime of conscious development and spiritual growth. The expanded awareness you touch during your night in the ancient meadow becomes a reference point, a standard of authenticity against which you can measure your progress in maintaining connection to the deeper dimensions of existence. When you find yourself caught up in superficial concerns or temporary anxieties, you can remember the peace and clarity that are your birthright as a conscious being. When you feel isolated or disconnected from others, you can recall the profound sense of belonging that emerges from recognizing the fundamental interconnection that binds all beings together. When you struggle with questions of meaning and purpose, you can draw upon the understanding that your individual life is part of a vast and meaningful process of consciousness, exploring itself through countless forms and perspectives. The burial ground has provided you with resources for navigating all the challenges that conscious existence presents. Not simple answers or easy solutions, but the expanded awareness and deeper understanding that allow you to meet each situation with wisdom and compassion, rather than fear and confusion. As you finally arrive back in your familiar neighbourhood, you see your own home and the surrounding environment with eyes transformed by your experience in the ancient burial ground. Nothing appears physically different, yet everything looks somehow more alive, more meaningful, more connected to the larger patterns and purposes that govern all existence. Your house, which once seemed like a separate and isolated structure, now appears as one expression among countless others of consciousness creating forms for its own habitation and exploration. The trees in your yard, which once seemed like decorative background, now feel like ancient witnesses to the ongoing mystery of life, exploring itself through ever-changing forms. Even the most mundane objects and activities in your daily environment carry new meaning when perceived from the expanded awareness that the burial ground awakened. The water that flows from your tap connects you to the vast hydrological cycles that link all life on Earth. The food you eat connects you to the soil and sunlight and countless other life forms that make human existence possible. This enhanced perception of interconnection and meaning transforms even the most routine aspects of daily life into opportunities for wonder and gratitude. The expanded awareness you gained during your night in the burial ground continues to reveal the extraordinary nature of existence that is usually hidden beneath the surface of the apparently ordinary. As you settle back into your familiar surroundings, you understand that the real work of integration is just beginning. The profound experiences you had in the burial ground must now be translated into sustainable practices and perspectives that can guide your choices and actions in the complex circumstances of contemporary life. This translation process requires creativity and flexibility. The insights that emerged so naturally in the timeless environment of the ancient meadow must now find expression in the structured and fast-paced world of modern existence. The expanded awareness that felt so appropriate in natural surroundings must now discover ways to flourish in artificial environments. But you also understand that this challenge of integration is not unique to your situation. Every person who has ever experienced expanded consciousness has faced similar challenges of maintaining connection to deeper dimensions of existence while fulfilling ordinary responsibilities and relationships. The burial ground holds the wisdom of countless individuals who successfully navigated these challenges during their own lifetimes. Their example provides both inspiration and practical guidance for your own process of integration. They demonstrate that it is possible to live fully in the world while maintaining connection to the transcendent dimensions of existence. They show that expanded awareness and practical wisdom can be successfully combined to create lives of meaning and service. Your night in the ancient burial ground has connected you to this lineage of conscious beings who have dedicated their lives to the ongoing evolution of human awareness and understanding. You're no longer an isolated individual struggling alone with questions too large for any single perspective to answer. You have become part of a vast community of consciousness that extends across time and space. This community includes not only those who rest in the earth of the burial ground, but also all beings throughout history who have committed themselves to awakening and understanding. Your own process of integration contributes to the collective wisdom of this community, while drawing upon the insights and discoveries of all who have walked this path before you. The ancient burial ground continues to offer its gifts of transformation to anyone ready to receive them. Your night spent in communion with its mysteries has made you part of its ongoing work of awakening consciousness and revealing the deeper dimensions of existence. The expanded awareness you gained becomes part of the legacy that future visitors will encounter when they too spend time resting in the peaceful embrace of the ancient meadow. And so the cycle continues, as it has for countless generations and will continue for countless more. Consciousness exploring itself through individual perspectives, discovering ever deeper dimensions of understanding and compassion, gradually evolving toward greater wisdom and more skillful engagement with the mystery of existence. Your night in the ancient burial ground has given you a glimpse of this vast process and invited you to participate consciously in its ongoing unfoldment. The transformation you experienced will continue throughout your lifetime, gradually reshaping your understanding and your capacity to contribute to the healing and awakening of all consciousness. The burial ground waits patiently in its meadow, holding its secrets and its peace, ready to offer the gift of expanded awareness to the next visitor who arrives with an open heart and a willingness to be transformed by contact with the deepest mysteries of existence. Longing connects you to every human who has ever lived. This deep yearning appears to be a fundamental characteristic of human consciousness, a built-in recognition that something essential is missing from ordinary experience. But the longing is not just sadness, it is also orientation. It points towards something real and important, even if that something cannot be grasped or possessed. It keeps alive the recognition that there is more to existence than what appears on the surface. The 18th reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way ancient burial grounds can trigger what some call cellular memory, the sense that your body itself remembers experiences from the deep past, not just your personal past, but the evolutionary past of your entire lineage. As you rest in the grass, your body may begin to remember things that your conscious mind has never known. The memory of sleeping on the ground under open sky. The memory of being part of small communities where everyone was known and valued. The memory of living in direct relationship with the natural world. These body memories can create a profound sense of longing and loss. Your modern life, with its concrete and artificial lighting and processed food, may suddenly feel like exile from a more authentic way of being. Your disconnection from nature may register as a physical ache, but these memories can also awaken dormant capacities within you, the ability to feel completely at home in natural settings, the capacity to sense the health and mood of the land around you, the skill of reading the subtle signs that nature provides about weather, seasons, and the general state of the ecosystem. Your body knows how to be in places like the burial ground, even if your mind has forgotten. Your nervous system remembers how to relax into the rhythms of earth and sky. Your senses remember how to track the subtle changes in light and sound and scent that mark the passage of night into day. This body wisdom can be both gift and burden. It connects you to your evolutionary heritage, but it also highlights how far human culture has drifted from its natural roots. It awakens capacities you may never have the opportunity to develop fully in your modern life. The 19th challenge involves the way ancient burial grounds can evoke what some call soul memory, the sense that some essential part of you has existed long before your current lifetime and will continue to exist long after your body returns to Earth. This soul memory is not necessarily religious or supernatural. It might simply be the recognition that the matter and energy that make up your body have existed since the beginning of the universe, that the atoms in your bones were forged in ancient stars, that the consciousness that looks out through your eyes is part of a vast field of awareness that permeates all of existence. In the burial ground, surrounded by evidence of the continuity that persists through individual death, this sense of soul memory may become impossible to ignore. You may feel connected not just to your current lifetime, but to an ongoing process of awakening that includes all conscious beings. This expanded sense of identity can be overwhelming. If you have lived your life assuming that consciousness begins at birth and ends at death, the possibility of some form of continuity may challenge your fundamental assumptions about the nature of existence. The burial ground offers no clear answers about what, if anything, survives bodily death. But it does provide evidence that something persists. The influence of lives that ended long ago continues to shape the present moment. The love and wisdom of previous generations continue to inform current choices and possibilities. Whether you interpret this continuity in religious terms or purely naturalistic ones, the experience of soul memory can profoundly alter your relationship with your own life. It can help you see your current existence as part of a much larger story, as a chapter in an ongoing book rather than a complete story unto itself. The 20th reason you might not survive the night has to do with the way ancient burial grounds can dissolve the fear of death that underlies so much of human anxiety and suffering. Not through intellectual arguments or philosophical reasoning, but through direct experience of death as natural and peaceful transition. In the burial ground, death is not hidden or denied. It is acknowledged as part of the natural cycle that includes birth, growth, reproduction, aging, and return to Earth. The people who rest here made this transition successfully. They demonstrate that death is something that can be faced and undergone without catastrophe. This recognition can initially increase anxiety, as it makes the reality of your own mortality impossible to avoid. But gradually, as you rest in the peaceful atmosphere of the meadow, death may begin to feel less like a threat and more like a natural completion, less like failure and more like fulfillment of your essential nature. The grass that grows above the burial sites draws its nutrients from the decomposed bodies below. The cycle of death and rebirth is visible everywhere in nature. Your own participation in this cycle begins to feel like an honor rather than a punishment, a gift rather than a curse. This shift in perspective can be profoundly liberating. The fear of death underlies many of the anxieties and compulsions that drive human behavior. The need to achieve permanent significance, the desire to control outcomes, the tendency to cling to experiences and relationships that are naturally impermanent. As your fear of death dissolves, these secondary fears may also begin to release their hold on you. You may feel free to love more openly, knowing that loss is inevitable, but not catastrophic. You may feel free to take risks and explore possibilities, knowing that failure is temporary and ultimately inconsequential. The 21st challenge comes from the overwhelming sense of love that ancient burial grounds can evoke. Not personal love directed towards specific individuals, but impersonal love that includes everything without exception. Love for the entire process of existence in all its forms and expressions. This love is not sentimental or emotional in the ordinary sense. It is more like recognition. Recognition that everything that exists is part of the same fundamental mystery. That every form of consciousness, no matter how different from your own, is exploring the same basic questions about meaning and purpose and connection. The people buried in the meadow around you are engaged in this same exploration during their lifetimes. They experience joy and sorrow, hope and fear, love and loss, just as you do. They struggled with the same fundamental questions about how to live well in a world full of beauty and suffering. This recognition can evoke a love so vast and inclusive that it becomes difficult to contain within the boundaries of individual identity. Your heart may feel like it is expanding beyond your body, including more and more of existence within its embrace. This expansive love can be overwhelming in its intensity. It can leave you feeling vulnerable and raw, as if your usual emotional defenses have been completely dissolved. It can trigger tears that seem to come from some inexhaustible source deep within you. But this love is also healing in ways that more limited forms of affection cannot match. It dissolves the sense of separation that creates loneliness and alienation. It reveals the underlying unity that connects all conscious beings. It provides a foundation of acceptance that makes genuine peace possible. The 22nd reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way ancient burial grounds can awaken what some call mythic consciousness. The recognition that your individual life is participating in archetypal patterns that have been repeated throughout human history. As you rest in the meadow, you may begin to sense that your personal story is also a universal story, that your struggles and triumphs, your relationships and losses, your questions and insights are variations on themes that appear in the myths and legends of every culture. You're both a unique individual with your own particular history and circumstances, and also an embodiment of universal human experiences. You're both yourself and every person, both living in the 21st century and participating in timeless patterns that connect you to all humans who have ever lived. This mythic perspective can be disorienting for a consciousness trained to focus on the specific details of personal biography. Your individual story may seem both incredibly important and utterly predictable when viewed from this archetypal perspective. But mythic consciousness also provides access to wisdom that transcends personal experience. The stories and symbols that have guided human behavior for thousands of years become available as resources for navigating your own life challenges. The collective wisdom of your species becomes part of your personal inheritance. The burial ground is itself a mythic landscape, a place where the boundary between individual and collective, personal and archetypal, historical and eternal becomes fluid. A place where ancient patterns of meaning reveal themselves to anyone prepared to recognize them. The 23rd challenge involves the way such places can trigger what some call cosmic consciousness, the direct experience of your essential nature as awareness itself rather than as a separate individual embedded in awareness. This shift in identity can be subtle or dramatic, depending on your preparation and receptivity. It might begin as a simple relaxation of the boundaries that usually define your sense of self, a softening of the distinction between inner and outer, self and other, observer and observed. As this relaxation deepens, you may begin to experience yourself less as a thing that is aware and more as awareness within which things appear and disappear, less as a subject observing objects, and more as the open space within which both subjects and objects arise. This cosmic perspective can be both liberating and terrifying. Liberating because it reveals your essential nature as unlimited and eternal. Terrifying because it dissolves the familiar landmarks of individual identity that usually provide security and orientation. The burial ground supports this shift in consciousness because it is a place where individual identity is naturally held lightly. The people who rest here have already surrendered their personal identities. They have returned to the source from which individual consciousness emerges and to which it eventually returns. Spending time in such a place can prepare you for your own eventual surrender of individual identity at the time of death. It can provide a preview of the transition that awaits every conscious being. It can help you become familiar with the vastness that exists beyond the boundaries of personal selfhood. The 24th reason you might not survive the night has to do with the profound silence that such transitions into cosmic consciousness require. Not just external silence, but the stopping of all internal commentary and interpretation, the complete cessation of the mental activity that usually maintains the sense of being a separate self. This inner silence is more profound than anything you have experienced in ordinary meditation or contemplation. It is the silence that exists before thoughts arise and after they dissolve. The silence that is not empty but pregnant with infinite possibility. Achieving this depth of silence while remaining conscious requires a kind of letting go that can feel like death itself. The death of the narrator who usually provides commentary on your experience. The death of the controller who usually tries to manage and direct the flow of awareness. Your mind, so accustomed to constant activity, may resist this invitation to complete stillness. It may generate thoughts and distractions in an attempt to maintain its familiar patterns of operation. It may create anxiety or restlessness as it encounters the possibility of its own temporary cessation. But if you can surrender to this silence, you may discover that it is not empty or boring. It is full of life in a way that mental activity never is. It is the source from which all thoughts and experiences emerge. It is the womb of consciousness itself. In this silence, the questions that have driven your spiritual seeking may simply dissolve. Not because they have been answered, but because the one who was asking them has temporarily disappeared. What remains is pure awareness, prior to all questions and answers, prior to all problems and solutions. The 25th challenge comes from the recognition that this cosmic consciousness, once tasted, reveals the relative nature of all the concerns and goals that usually motivate human behavior. Career success, relationship satisfaction, financial security, social recognition. All may seem like games played by someone you no longer entirely identify with. This recognition can create what some call spiritual depression, a sense that nothing in ordinary life really matters, that all human pursuits are essentially meaningless distractions from the only thing that ultimately counts, the recognition of your true nature as unlimited awareness. The burial ground intensifies this recognition because it provides evidence that all individual achievements eventually return to dust. The people who rest here once had careers and relationships, successes and failures, hopes and fears. Now they are remembered, if at all, only as anonymous participants in the great mystery of existence. This perspective can make it difficult to re-engage with ordinary life after spending time in expanded states of consciousness. The concerns that seemed so important before your night in the burial ground may feel trivial or illusory. The goals that once motivated you may seem like pursuits of shadows, but this disillusionment, while initially difficult, can also be profoundly liberating. It can free you from the compulsive pursuit of achievements that can never provide lasting satisfaction. It can help you recognize the difference between activities that arise from fear and those that emerge from love. The burial ground teaches that meaning comes not from personal accomplishment, but from participation in the larger mystery of existence. That significance is found not in being remembered, but in contributing to the ongoing process of consciousness, exploring itself through countless forms and experiences. The 26th reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way ancient burial grounds can awaken what some call prophetic consciousness, the capacity to sense possibilities and potentials that exist beyond the current moment, to perceive the seeds of future developments that are germinating in the present. This prophetic awareness is not supernatural prediction of specific events. Rather, it is sensitivity to the deeper currents of change that flow beneath the surface of obvious developments, the capacity to sense the direction that evolution is taking, both individually and collectively. As you rest in the meadow, you may begin to sense the potential futures that are emerging from present conditions. Some of these possibilities may be beautiful and inspiring, others may be challenging or even frightening. All exist as real potentials waiting to be actualized through human choice and action. This expanded temporal awareness can be overwhelming for a consciousness accustomed to focusing on immediate concerns. The weight of all possible futures may feel too heavy to bear. The responsibility of participating in choices that will affect generations yet unborn may seem too great for any individual to carry. But prophetic consciousness also provides access to hope and guidance that transcend personal limitations. It connects you to the wisdom of the future as well as the past. It allows you to participate consciously in the evolutionary process that is carrying all life toward greater complexity and consciousness. The burial ground holds the dreams and visions of all those who rest here, their hopes for the future, their concerns about developments they would not live to see, their contributions to the ongoing stream of human aspiration. These dreams become part of your own prophetic awareness. The 27th challenge involves what some call genealogical consciousness, the overwhelming awareness of your connection to all the generations of ancestors whose lives made your existence possible. Not just your immediate family lineage, but the entire human family tree stretching back to the beginning. As you lie in the grass, you may begin to feel the presence of countless ancestors, parents and grandparents, great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, extending backward through time like an infinite constellation of lives. Each one faced challenges and made choices that ultimately led to your birth. This genealogical awareness can evoke profound gratitude mixed with almost unbearable responsibility. Gratitude for the gift of existence that has been passed down through so many generations, responsibility to honor the sacrifices and struggles that made your life possible. The people buried in the meadow around you are part of this vast ancestral network, whether or not they are your direct biological ancestors. They participated in the same great experiment of human consciousness, exploring itself through individual lives and relationships and communities. Your connection to this ancestral network means that you are never truly alone, but it also means that your choices carry weight beyond your personal life. Every decision you make affects not only your immediate circumstances, but the entire ongoing stream of human development. This recognition can be paralyzing if approached with too much seriousness, or liberating if received with appropriate humility. You're both incredibly important as a unique participant in the evolutionary process, and utterly replaceable as one temporary expression of consciousness among countless others. The 28th reason you might not survive the night has to do with the way ancient burial grounds can dissolve what some call the illusion of progress, the assumption that human development follows a linear path from primitive to advanced, from ignorance to knowledge, from suffering to happiness. In the burial ground, surrounded by evidence of lives that were lived fully thousands of years ago, this assumption about progress reveals its limitations. The people who rest here experience the same essential human experiences that you experience now. They felt love and loss, joy and sorrow, wonder and confusion with the same intensity that characterizes your own life. Their understanding of the fundamental questions of existence may have been different from yours, but it was not necessarily inferior. Their ways of relating to the natural world, to their communities, to the mystery of consciousness itself may have included wisdom that has been lost in the process of technological advancement. This recognition can trigger what some call civilizational grief, sorrow for the wisdom traditions that have been abandoned in the pursuit of material progress, regret for the connection to nature that has been sacrificed for technological convenience, mourning for ways of life that may have been more sustainable and fulfilling than current patterns of existence. The burial ground represents both continuity and loss, continuity of the essential human experience across all historical periods, loss of specific ways of understanding and engaging with that experience that may never be recovered. This perspective can make your modern life feel both privileged and impoverished. Privileged because of the material comforts and technological capabilities available to you. Impoverished because of the disconnection from nature, community, and spiritual understanding that often accompanies modern existence. The 29th challenge comes from the overwhelming sense of responsibility that can arise from recognizing your place in the vast web of relationships that connect all life. The recognition that every choice you make sends ripples through the entire network of existence. In the burial ground, this web of relationships becomes tangible. The people who rest here were connected to countless others during their lifetimes, children and parents, friends and enemies, neighbors and strangers whose lives were affected by their presence. These connections continue to influence the present through the ongoing effects of past actions and relationships. Your own life is embedded in a similar web of relationships. Every person you encounter is affected by your presence, just as you are affected by theirs. Every action you take changes the conditions that will influence future developments. Every word you speak becomes part of the ongoing conversation that shapes collective human understanding. This recognition of interconnection can evoke a sense of responsibility so vast that it becomes difficult to act at all. Every choice carries implications that extend far beyond your immediate circumstances. Every decision affects not only your personal life but the entire ongoing process of evolution on Earth. But this responsibility can also be approached with joy rather than burden. The recognition that you matter, that your life makes a difference, that your unique contribution to the web of existence is irreplaceable, the understanding that you have been given the extraordinary privilege of participating consciously in the great mystery of existence. The burial ground teaches that this responsibility is shared among all conscious beings, that no individual carries the entire weight of existence alone, that your contribution, however significant, is part of a vast collaborative effort that includes all life forms and all generations. The 30th reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way ancient burial grounds can trigger what some call ecological awakening, the direct recognition of your embeddedness in the natural systems that support all life on Earth. As you rest in the meadow, your body begins to remember its fundamental dependence on the air, water, soil, and countless other life forms that make human existence possible. This dependence, usually invisible in urban environments, becomes impossible to ignore. In a place where the boundaries between human and natural are fluid, you begin to breathe more consciously, aware that each breath connects you to the photosynthetic activity of plants and trees. You feel your body temperature responding to the cooling night air, aware of your kinship with all warm-blooded creatures who share this basic vulnerability to environmental conditions. The people buried beneath the meadow understood this embeddedness in ways that may have been lost to modern consciousness. They lived in direct relationship with the natural world, dependent on its rhythms and cycles for survival. Their lives were woven into the larger community of life in ways that made their ecological identity impossible to ignore. This ecological awakening can trigger profound grief for the damage that human activity has inflicted on natural systems, guilt for your own participation in patterns of consumption that contribute to environmental destruction, anxiety about the future of the planetary systems that support all life. But it can also awaken a fierce protectiveness toward the natural world, a willingness to change personal habits and support political policies that prioritize ecological health, a recognition that caring for the Earth is not environmental activism, but simply enlightened self-interest. The burial ground demonstrates that humans can live in harmony with natural systems, that it is possible to participate in the community of life without destroying the conditions that support that participation. That ecological wisdom is part of your evolutionary heritage, even if it has been temporarily forgotten. The 31st challenge involves the way such places can awaken what some call geological consciousness. Awareness of the vast timescales on which the Earth itself operates, the recognition that the ground beneath you has its own history stretching back millions of years. The rocks that underlie the soil of the burial ground were formed through processes that required millennia to complete. The minerals that nourish the grass above were created through cycles of weathering and erosion that dwarf all human history. The very atoms that make up your body were forged in ancient stars and have been recycling through countless forms for billions of years. This geological perspective can make human concerns seem almost absurdly temporary and insignificant. The worries that keep you awake at night, the goals that drive your daily actions, the relationships that seem so important to your sense of identity, all are brief episodes in a story that began long before human consciousness emerged and will continue long after the last human has returned to Earth. Your individual lifetime, which usually feels so substantial and meaningful, becomes a brief flicker when viewed from geological perspective. Your entire species appears as a recent experiment in the Earth's ongoing exploration of consciousness and complexity. This recognition can be either humbling or terrifying, depending on your capacity to find meaning within vast scales of time and space. It can help you release attachment to outcomes that extend beyond your control, or it can trigger existential anxiety about the ultimate significance of human existence. The burial ground offers a middle perspective between the geological and the personal. It acknowledges the brevity of individual lives while also honouring their significance. It recognises that meaning exists at multiple scales simultaneously. The 32nd reason you might not survive the night has to do with the profound loneliness that can arise from expanded states of consciousness. The recognition that the experiences you're having in the burial ground cannot be fully communicated to others who have not had similar experiences. As your awareness expands to include perspectives and insights that transcend ordinary human understanding, you may feel increasingly isolated from the world of conventional concerns and conversations. The people in your daily life may seem to be living in a different reality altogether, focused on matters that now appear trivial or illusory. This spiritual loneliness is different from ordinary loneliness. It is not the result of lack of social connection, but of having moved beyond the shared assumptions that usually make communication possible. You may find yourself unable to relate to conversations about career advancement, consumer purchases, or social status that once seemed important. The burial ground intensifies this loneliness because it is a place where expanded consciousness feels natural and ordinary. Here, surrounded by evidence of the transient nature of all individual achievements, the concerns that dominate most human conversation reveal their limitations. But this loneliness can also be a doorway to a different kind of connection. Connection with others who have had similar experiences of expanded awareness. Connection with the natural world that operates on principles more compatible with expanded consciousness. Connection with the deeper currents of existence that flow beneath the surface of ordinary social interaction. The people who rest in the burial ground may have experienced similar loneliness during their lifetimes, the isolation that comes from seeing through the illusions that provide comfort to most people, the challenge of living with expanded awareness in a world that often seems designed for much smaller perspectives. The 33rd challenge comes from what some call temporal displacement, the sense that you no longer belong entirely to the time period in which you were born, that your consciousness has become unstuck from its historical moment, and is capable of accessing perspectives from multiple eras simultaneously. As you rest in the meadow, you may find yourself thinking and feeling in ways that seem more compatible with earlier historical periods. The values and concerns that drive modern life may feel foreign to you, while ways of understanding that characterized ancient cultures feel familiar and natural. This temporal displacement can make it difficult to function effectively in contemporary society. The pace and priorities of modern life may seem jarring and unnatural. The technologies and social structures that others take for granted may feel alienating and dehumanizing. But this displacement can also provide access to wisdom and perspectives that have been lost in the process of historical development. Ways of relating to nature, community, and spiritual reality that may be essential for navigating current global challenges. The burial ground exists outside of linear historical time in some sense. The people who rest here belong to their own historical moments, but they also participated in timeless human experiences that transcend any particular era. Love and loss, birth and death, joy and sorrow, wonder and confusion appear in every historical period. Your own consciousness, expanded through contact with this timeless dimension, may no longer fit comfortably within the assumptions and expectations of your contemporary culture. You may feel like a visitor from another time, trying to make sense of customs and values that seem arbitrary and limiting. The 34th reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way ancient burial grounds can dissolve what some call the illusion of control, the assumption that human beings can and should direct the course of events through planning, effort, and willpower. In the burial ground, surrounded by evidence that all human plans eventually end in death, this assumption reveals its limitations. The people who rest here once made plans and set goals, worked hard and tried to control outcomes. Now they have surrendered all control and become part of processes far larger than individual will. This recognition can initially increase anxiety, as it challenges one of the fundamental assumptions that guide human behavior. If you cannot ultimately control outcomes, what is the point of effort? If all achievements are temporary, why strive for anything? But the dissolution of the illusion of control can also be profoundly liberating. It can free you from the exhausting burden of trying to manage outcomes that are ultimately beyond your influence. It can help you distinguish between what is within your control and what is not. The burial ground teaches a different relationship with action and effort, action that arises from love rather than fear, effort that is offered without attachment to results, participation in life processes that are inherently meaningful rather than instrumental toward some imagined future goal. This shift from control to participation requires a fundamental reorientation of consciousness. Instead of seeing yourself as separate from the processes of existence and trying to manipulate them from the outside, you begin to experience yourself as part of those processes, contributing to their unfolding from within. The 35th challenge involves what some call identity dissolution, the gradual breakdown of all the categories and concepts through which you usually understand yourself as a distinct individual, separate from everything else. As the night deepens and your consciousness continues to expand, the boundaries that usually define your sense of self may become increasingly permeable. The distinction between your inner thoughts and the sounds of the night around you may blur. The difference between your memories and the history of the place may become unclear. This dissolution of identity boundaries can be terrifying for a consciousness that has learned to equate selfhood with survival. If you're not who you think you are, then who or what are you? If the boundaries that define your individuality are illusory, what prevents you from disappearing entirely? But identity dissolution can also reveal the artificial nature of the boundaries that usually create the sense of separation from the rest of existence. It can demonstrate that your essential nature is much vaster and more fundamental than any personal identity could contain. The burial ground supports this dissolution because it is a place where personal identities have already been surrendered. The people who rest here have undergone the ultimate identity dissolution through death. They demonstrate that consciousness continues even when individual identity ends. Your temporary experience of identity dissolution during a night in the burial ground can serve as preparation for the final dissolution that awaits every conscious being. It can help you become familiar with the vastness that exists beyond the boundaries of personal selfhood. The 36th reason you might not survive the night has to do with the overwhelming compassion that can arise from recognizing the fundamental unity that underlies the apparent diversity of existence. Compassion not just for humans, but for all forms of consciousness struggling to understand themselves and their place in the mystery of existence. This universal compassion is different from ordinary sympathy or empathy. It arises not from emotional identification with others' suffering, but from recognition that the one who suffers in others is the same one who suffers in you. That consciousness is exploring itself through countless forms and experiencing the full range of possibilities that existence offers. The people buried in the meadow around you were expressions of this same universal consciousness during their lifetimes. They experienced joy and sorrow, love and fear, hope and despair as part of consciousness exploring its own nature through individual lives and relationships. Your recognition of this unity can evoke compassion so vast and inclusive that it becomes difficult to contain within the boundaries of individual identity. Your heart may feel like it is expanding to include all of existence within its embrace. All humans, all animals, all forms of life, all expressions of consciousness throughout the universe. This expansive compassion can be overwhelming in its intensity. It can leave you feeling raw and vulnerable, as if your usual emotional defenses have been completely dissolved. It can trigger waves of emotion that seem to arise from some inexhaustible source deep within the fabric of existence itself. But this compassion is also profoundly healing. It dissolves the sense of separation that creates loneliness and alienation. It reveals the love that is the fundamental nature of consciousness exploring itself. It provides a foundation for action that is motivated by recognition of unity rather than fear of separation. The 37th challenge comes from what some call evolutionary pressure, the sense that your expanded consciousness carries with it a responsibility to contribute to the ongoing evolution of human awareness, that you cannot simply return to your previous level of understanding and continue living as if nothing had changed. The experiences you have in the burial ground are not just personal insights meant for your own edification. They are part of the larger process through which human consciousness is evolving toward greater complexity, wisdom, and compassion. Your individual awakening contributes to the collective awakening of your entire species. This evolutionary responsibility can feel overwhelming. How can you possibly integrate insights that transcend ordinary human understanding into a life that must still deal with practical concerns like earning money, maintaining relationships, and meeting social obligations? The burial ground offers examples of people who face similar challenges during their own lifetimes. Individuals who experienced expanded consciousness but still had to find ways to live in the world of their time, who had to translate transcendent insights into practical wisdom that could guide daily choices and actions. Your challenge is to find ways to honor the expanded awareness that the burial ground has awakened without becoming so detached from ordinary life that you lose your effectiveness in the world, to remain grounded in practical concerns while maintaining access to transcendent perspectives. This integration of expanded consciousness with ordinary life is one of the great challenges of human evolution. It requires developing what some call spiritual maturity, the capacity to hold multiple levels of awareness simultaneously without becoming confused or overwhelmed by their apparent contradictions. The 38th reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the profound silence that emerges when all internal commentary ceases and you rest in pure awareness without any mental activity whatsoever. This silence is so complete that it can feel like the cessation of existence itself. In this ultimate silence, even the awareness of being aware disappears. What remains cannot be described because description requires some form of mental activity, and all mental activity has ceased. It is not unconsciousness, but consciousness prior to all content. Awareness before any object of awareness arises. This state can be terrifying for a mind accustomed to constant activity. The complete cessation of all familiar landmarks of consciousness can trigger primal fears of annihilation. The ego mind may struggle desperately to re-establish some form of mental activity to confirm that you still exist. But this ultimate silence is also the source from which all existence emerges. It is the womb of consciousness itself, the space within which all experiences arise and into which they eventually dissolve. It is not empty but pregnant with infinite creative potential. The burial ground supports entry into this profound silence because it is a place where the normal activities of human consciousness naturally come to rest, where the endless cycle of desire and fulfillment, problem and solution, question and answer temporarily ceases. Emerging from this silence, you may find that your relationship with mental activity has been fundamentally altered. Thoughts and emotions may arise less frequently and with less compulsive force. The space between thoughts may feel more substantial and nourishing than the thoughts themselves. The 39th challenge involves what some call the return, the process of integrating expanded states of consciousness with ordinary awareness and daily life responsibilities. This integration can be more difficult than the initial expansion itself. After spending time in the timeless awareness of the burial ground, the world of clocks and calendars, deadlines and obligations may feel jarring and artificial. The concerns that once seemed so important may appear trivial or meaningless. The activities that once provided satisfaction may feel empty or pointless. This difficulty with re-entry into ordinary consciousness is sometimes called spiritual depression. The recognition that expanded awareness reveals the limitations of conventional life can make it difficult to find motivation for ordinary activities and responsibilities, but the return to ordinary consciousness is also an opportunity to bring the wisdom gained in expanded states into practical application, to test whether transcendent insights can actually improve the quality of daily life and relationships. The people buried in the meadow around you face similar challenges of integration during their lifetimes. They had to find ways to live meaningfully in the world while maintaining some connection to the expanded awareness that gives life its deepest significance. Your challenge is to find a sustainable balance between transcendent understanding and practical effectiveness, to remain open to expanded awareness while also remaining engaged with the world of human concerns and responsibilities. This integration is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing process that requires constant attention and adjustment. The balance between transcendence and immanence, between expanded awareness and practical engagement, must be continually renegotiated as circumstances change and understanding deepens. The 40th reason you might not survive the night has to do with what some call the burden of knowledge, the recognition that expanded awareness once achieved cannot be lost or forgotten, that you must now live with perspectives and insights that most people do not share and may not be able to understand. This expanded awareness becomes part of your permanent identity. You cannot return to the innocence or ignorance that once provided comfort and simplicity. You must now navigate life with the knowledge of perspectives that reveal the limitations of ordinary human concerns and motivations. This burden of knowledge can create a sense of exile from the human community. You may feel like you are living in a different world from those around you, seeing through illusions that still provide meaning and motivation for others. But this knowledge is also a gift that allows you to contribute to the ongoing evolution of human consciousness. Your expanded awareness becomes a resource not just for your own life, but for anyone who is ready to receive the insights that such awareness makes possible. The burial ground holds the accumulated wisdom of countless individuals who lived with similar burden and gift of expanded awareness. Their understanding continues to influence the present through the subtle ways that consciousness affects the environments it inhabits. Your own expanded awareness will similarly continue to influence future generations, whether or not you are consciously aware of this influence. The consciousness that you develop becomes part of the collective inheritance of your species. The 41st challenge comes from what some call cosmic loneliness, the recognition that expanded consciousness, while connecting you to the universal aspects of existence, can also isolate you from the particular relationships and communities that usually provide human beings with a sense of belonging. As your identity expands beyond the boundaries of personal history and individual concerns, you may feel less connected to family members, friends, and colleagues who remain focused on more limited perspectives. Your conversations may become strained as you struggle to relate to concerns that no longer seem significant from your expanded viewpoint. This cosmic loneliness is different from ordinary social isolation. It arises not from lack of social contact, but from having moved beyond the shared assumptions that usually make intimate communication possible. You may feel like you are speaking a different language, even when using the same words, but this loneliness can also be a doorway to a different kind of connection. Connection with others who have had similar experiences of expanded awareness. Connection with the natural world that operates according to principles more compatible with expanded consciousness. Connection with the deeper currents of existence that flow beneath the surface of ordinary social interaction. The burial ground offers communion with others who may have experienced similar cosmic loneliness during their lifetimes, the isolation that comes from seeing beyond the illusions that provide comfort and meaning to most people, the challenge of living with expanded awareness in a world that often seems designed for much smaller perspectives. The 42nd reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way ancient burial grounds can trigger what some call species grief, profound sorrow for the current state of human civilization and the gap between humanity's potential for wisdom and compassion and its actual patterns of behavior. From the expanded perspective that the burial ground provides, the current trajectory of human development may appear deeply troubling. The focus on material accumulation at the expense of spiritual development, the tendency toward competition and conflict rather than cooperation and harmony, the disconnection from natural systems that support all life. This species' grief is not ordinary sadness, but a profound mourning for what humanity could become if it developed its capacity for wisdom and compassion more fully. It includes grief for the suffering that results from unconscious patterns of behavior that persist despite their obvious destructiveness. The people buried in the meadow around you may have experienced similar grief during their own lifetimes. Sorrow for the gap between human potential and human actuality. Disappointment with the slow pace of evolution in consciousness and behavior. But this grief can also fuel commitment to contributing positively to human development. Recognition that your own consciousness evolution is part of the larger process through which humanity gradually develops greater wisdom and compassion. The burial ground teaches patience with the pace of human evolution. It demonstrates that consciousness development occurs over time, scales that transcend individual lifetimes, that your contribution to this process is meaningful, even if you do not live to see dramatic changes in collective behavior. The 43rd challenge involves what some call ontological shock, the disorienting recognition that reality is fundamentally different from what you had previously assumed, that the basic categories through which you organize experience may be inadequate or misleading. The expanded awareness that the burial ground provides can reveal that concepts like self and other, past and future, life and death, real and unreal, are much more fluid and interpenetrating than ordinary consciousness assumes. These categories, which usually seem obviously true and stable, may be revealed as useful but ultimately arbitrary constructions. This ontological shock can be profoundly disorienting. If the basic framework through which you understand reality is questionable, how can you make sense of anything? How can you make decisions or take actions when the fundamental assumptions that usually guide behavior are no longer reliable? But ontological shock can also be liberating. It can free you from limiting beliefs and assumptions that have restricted your understanding and behavior. It can open you to possibilities that were previously inconceivable. The burial ground challenges many of the assumptions that organize ordinary experience. The assumption that consciousness is produced by individual brains and ends with bodily death. The assumption that the past is fixed and unchangeable. The assumption that meaning must be created by individual will and effort. Living with this ontological uncertainty requires developing what some call negative capability, the ability to remain in uncertainty and doubt without irritably reaching after fact and reason, the capacity to function effectively while holding fundamental questions about the nature of reality lightly. The 44th reason you might not survive the night has to do with the overwhelming gratitude that can arise from recognizing the incredible gift of consciousness itself. Not just your individual consciousness, but the entire phenomenon of awareness emerging from matter and energy. This gratitude goes far beyond ordinary thankfulness for specific benefits or experiences. It includes gratitude for the entire mysterious process through which the universe has organized itself in ways that permit the emergence of awareness, understanding, love, and meaning. The burial ground evokes this cosmic gratitude because it provides evidence of countless expressions of consciousness that have participated in the ongoing exploration of existence. Each person who rests here was a unique experiment in awareness, contributing their own discoveries and insights to the collective understanding of what it means to exist. Your own consciousness is part of this same vast experiment. Your awareness, your capacity for love and understanding, your ability to wonder and question, and create meaning are expressions of the universe's ongoing attempt to understand itself through individual perspectives. This recognition can evoke gratitude so vast and profound that it becomes difficult to contain within ordinary emotional categories. It may trigger tears that seem to arise from some inexhaustible source of appreciation for the sheer improbability and preciousness of conscious existence. But this gratitude can also be overwhelming in its implications. If consciousness is such an extraordinary gift, how should you use it? What responsibilities come with this incredible capacity for awareness and understanding? How can you possibly live up to the potential that consciousness represents? The burial ground suggests that consciousness itself is the gift, regardless of what particular achievements it produces. That awareness exploring itself through individual perspectives is inherently meaningful, regardless of what specific discoveries or accomplishments result from that exploration. The 45th challenge comes from what some call temporal vertigo, the disorienting experience of existing simultaneously in multiple timeframes. personal time, historical time, geological time, cosmic time, all present and accessible at once. As you rest in the meadow, your awareness may shift fluidly between different temporal scales. Your individual lifetime may feel both incredibly brief and infinitely long. The historical period in which you live may seem both recent and ancient. The age of the Earth may feel both vast and immediate. This temporal vertigo can be deeply unsettling for a consciousness trained to organize experience according to linear sequences and clear, chronological boundaries. Past, present, and future may become fluid categories that flow into each other like streams converging into a river. But this temporal flexibility can also provide access to wisdom and perspectives that are unavailable to consciousness locked into a single time frame. The patience of geological time, the urgency of biological time, the timelessness of awareness itself all become available as resources for understanding and action. The burial ground exists at the intersection of multiple timescales. The people who rest here belong to their own historical moments, but also participated in timeless human experiences. The ground itself carries the history of countless seasons and geological epochs. The awareness that contemplates all of this exists outside of time altogether. Learning to navigate multiple temporal perspectives simultaneously is one of the challenges and opportunities that expanded consciousness provides. It requires developing a kind of temporal flexibility that allows you to access different timescales as appropriate for different situations and purposes. The 46th reason you might struggle to survive the night relates to the way ancient burial grounds can trigger what some call dimensional bleed-through. The experience that boundaries between different dimensions or levels of reality become permeable. This is not necessarily supernatural or mystical in any conventional sense. It may simply be the recognition that reality has more dimensions than ordinary awareness usually perceives. That the physical world you normally inhabit exists within larger contexts that are usually invisible but always present. As the night deepens and your consciousness expands, you may begin to perceive aspects of reality that are normally filtered out by the selective attention of ordinary awareness. Subtle energies and information fields that exist alongside but beyond the reach of conventional senses. These perceptions challenge the assumption that physical reality is solid and separate from consciousness. They suggest that mind and matter exist within a larger unified field that includes both, but cannot be reduced to either. The burial ground may be a place where this dimensional bleed-through occurs more readily, because it is a location where the boundaries between life and death, past and present, individual and universal, are naturally thin. These experiences cannot be easily verified or explained through conventional scientific methods, but they may provide access to information and perspectives that are unavailable through ordinary means of knowing. They may reveal aspects of reality that are normally hidden, but potentially accessible to expanded forms of awareness. The 47th challenge involves what some call the paradox of action, the difficulty of maintaining motivation for ordinary activities when expanded consciousness reveals their ultimate insignificance from cosmic perspectives. After experiencing the vast timescales and universal perspectives that the burial ground provides, the concerns that usually drive human behavior may seem trivial or meaningless. Career advancement, relationship conflicts, financial worries may appear to be problems created by unnecessarily limited perspectives. This recognition can lead to a kind of paralysis, where action becomes difficult because no particular course of action seems more meaningful than any other. If everything is ultimately impermanent and insignificant from cosmic perspectives, why do anything at all? But the paradox of action can also be resolved through recognizing that action itself is meaningful regardless of its outcomes. That participation in the ongoing process of existence is inherently valuable, even when specific achievements are temporary and limited. The burial ground demonstrates that meaningful action is possible within the context of ultimate impermanence. The people who rest here lived full lives, loved deeply, contributed to their communities, pursued understanding and beauty despite knowing that their individual achievements would eventually return to dust. The resolution of the paradox of action requires finding ways to remain fully engaged with life while holding all outcomes lightly, to act with complete commitment while maintaining awareness of the ultimate insignificance of specific results. The 48th reason you might not survive the night has to do with the profound responsibility that comes from recognizing your role as a conscious participant in the ongoing evolution of existence itself. This responsibility extends far beyond personal success or failure to include participation in processes that affect the development of consciousness throughout the universe. From the expanded perspective that the burial ground provides, your individual life appears as one experiment among countless others in the universe's ongoing exploration of awareness, meaning, and possibility. Your particular insights and discoveries become data in a vast research project whose scope transcends any individual understanding. This recognition can evoke a sense of responsibility so vast that it becomes difficult to act at all. How can you possibly live up to the cosmic significance that this perspective implies? How can your limited human capacities contribute meaningfully to processes that operate on universal scales? But this cosmic responsibility can also be approached with humility rather than grandiosity. Your contribution to the evolution of consciousness is significant precisely because it is offered from within the limitations of individual perspective. The universe learns about itself through countless limited viewpoints, each offering partial but valuable insights. The people buried in the meadow around you participated in this same cosmic experiment during their lifetimes. Their individual perspectives and discoveries became part of the ongoing development of consciousness, even though they may never have been conscious of this contribution.